Good morning. Say hey, Simba. Say hey, I'm the only one in this house that doesn't have shadow work to do. Yeah, that's right, because I'm just a baby. Just a baby. Okay, I'm gonna be an adult. Okay, welcome to Flip Your Lid. Yo, this is a little bit different today. I'm just hanging out with me. I invited my own self to my podcast. Look at that. That's how you get an invitation. You extend it to your own self. So I want to elaborate because yesterday I had the honor of speaking to a creative group, and they asked me to come in and talk about creative burnout. And I got to talk about, because I think there's 4 things that are the underpinning of burnout, or what people call sabotage, and it leads to a lot of behavior. And so I got to talk about shadow work, right? The shadow process, what shadow is and shadow work is, and talked about the 3 intelligence centers. Because if you know your 3 intelligence centers, the order of them and which one is repressed, which means it's the least and last that you use, inside of that is your shadow. And the 2 I didn't get to talk about was attachment orientation, and then also understanding your autonomic nervous system. But here's what's super interesting. They heard about shadow work. They heard about 3 intelligence centers: do, think, and feel. And the order of that is based on your childhood, right? What's your primary of those 3? What's your secondary? And then the third one's always repressed. So I'm a doer. I do things. My thinking supports what I'm doing. I don't think about what I'm doing, y'all. I just do things. And then my feelings are what are repressed. That's the last and least I use. Therefore, my shadow, right, something that's underdeveloped in me, unintegrated in me, which causes problems, more likely to lead to burnout, being tired, etc., is inside of that repressed intelligence center. So I got to talk about defined shadow work, and I got to talk about 3 intelligence centers. But this amazing group, they're just so cool. Their questions afterwards had more to do with how the shadow work comes up in marriages, how the shadow work comes up at work, right? Like somebody was just vulnerable in expressing that when he's at work, he can do whatever is asked of him. He can finish someone else's project. He can't do his own, right? You can hear more of a preoccupied, anxious attachment inside of that, and that his probably childhood conditioning had to do with leaning in to what someone else needed for safety, and that became the rules of what is believed to be engagement. I think it's rules of disengagement. And so there's an underdeveloped sense of self, and doesn't necessarily have permission. Maybe got taught that things about self are selfish, always put other people first. A lot of things we also get taught in religion that just are not healthy. Without a development of self, then your definition of selfish becomes void of self. And that is incredibly unhealthy. But if you have an essence, a sense of self, you know you're worthy. And from there, you start learning about when to put someone else first or put somebody just right beside you. Very different than being a child and being taught that it can't be about you, it has to be about everybody else, right? So now he's a young adult, right? Probably in his mid-20s, and he can't do for self, but he can do for others, right? So you see how his preoccupied anxious attachment taught as a child, then the idea of that he can do for others, but he can't do for himself, which probably means honestly that his thinking gets tapped into, that what he feels and what he thinks and what he does, there's shadow inside of that, right? Like, you follow me? There's something unintegrated, underdeveloped in him. If you have over functioning in your relationship, like you're always doing for the other person, you're over functioning, something's underdeveloped in you, and then you want your partner to be the one that satiates that and cures that, solves that for you when it's your work to do. Please hear me. I'm talking about healthy relationships, right? I'm not talking about narcissistic relationships. I'm not talking about anything that's toxic. I'm saying that if you're with a healthy person and you are preoccupied, anxious, the other person most likely is avoidant, right? And please hear me. There are different levels. You can be mildly avoidant. You can be moderate, severely avoidant. So it's going to look different. But what most people do, most people are in a preoccupied anxious attachment. That person marries a dismissive avoidant attachment, which means one person, the preoccupied, is constantly looking to the other person to make it better for them because they don't know how to make it better for themselves. The avoidant is just thinking, how do I get through this? How do I figure this out? How do I not have any needs? How do I not let someone see I have needs? Let me satiate the other person. Let me be there for the other person, but done through their own lens, which usually does not satiate the other person's needs. It doesn't allow there to actually be connection. It becomes transactional, right? It's not actual connection. I promise you that's the most common marriage, what is described. And inside of that, there's a lot of shadow work that needs to be done. And that means that if in the shadow are your needs, and most likely for both people, their understanding of having their needs fulfilled and defined and engineered for them is going to be limited. Both are going to be limited. It's just going to look different. So if you don't have that awareness, you're just looking to the other person to make that better for you, or you're just throwing band-aids here and there, and you're not actually doing your own work. And here's the thing, if you're both doing your own work, it's sloppy, it's messy, it doesn't look great when the person who doesn't know how to have their own needs starts trying to voice that. The person who is always wanting someone else to solve their problems now has to learn how to self-regulate and not hide behind someone else's needs. Be open about, both people are trying to be open about that actually have needs, but most time that is shadowed for both, right? It is repressed, it is pushed down, it just looks different, but they're both in a similar situation, similar fight. But if I'm just looking to you to change you, if you just do this for me, then I'll be okay. That's an indication there's some shadow work to be done. If I just think, oh, if I just get this done for you, then you won't yell at me, we're not connected. We're actually living with our shadow. We're looking, your partner now is representing your shadow. And so you're constantly keeping them at some arm's distance, one way or another. Whether you're preoccupied, anxious attached, or dismissive avoidant, that will dictate what that looks like. So if you're wanting to work on that, really don't do the trendy attachment orientation work. This is about attachment strategies. How is this coming up in your marriage? How do you find a couples therapist or a spiritual director who really has a good understanding of that and help you start navigating through this differently? Because you're both going to have to be really uncomfortable and build your stress tolerance. That was a big thing that came up yesterday. The other thing came up, I was telling people that, like, if you were raised to be very reserved and to be more introverted and quiet, and then let's say you become an adult and go to an event, and someone there is very obnoxious and gregarious, you're going to either be repulsed by it because they're doing something you were taught not to do. They're leading with the very thing you were taught to not do. Or you're going to be so attracted to that, you're going to marry that person. But at some point, that gregarious obnoxiousness becomes unattractive to you, becomes repulsive to you, and you want them to change, even though it's the very thing that you were attracted to. But that's indication of the shadow work, right? That what we resist persists. And that's one of Dr. Carl Jung's quotes, right? Like you just get trapped inside of this. And so a lot of people had a lot of questions about, like, what do you do when you basically are living with your shadow? Your spouse, or sometimes it's your boss, is your shadow. So if you keep looking for them to change to make things better for you, then it doesn't work. You doing the work, like, dive in slowly, find the right cadence, have people in your life to help you with this. Start looking at what's my attachment orientation. And again, no, there's really 6, but there's only 4 that really get talked about. Know all 4. 1 secure connection, the other 3 insecure attachment, which means as a child, you learned, got ingrained in your autonomic nervous system, your relationship map is based on insecurity. That, think how well this is going to go, right? If this is our foundation. And so learn what they are, because you will walk in all 3 of them. But we need to know what a secure relating is, what secure connection is. So how do I start working on pausing and living in that, embodying secure connection, so I can interact differently? Because if I'm doing that, I'm no longer highly dependent on my spouse to change, because I'm doing the internal work, right? And one reason why people don't do this work is because if you start doing this work, then you have to figure out, am I compatible? I'm no longer playing out my issues with you. Do I really like you? Do we like each other? Do we get each other? Right? So if you're in a relationship and you're just like combating each other, constantly fighting for your life and all that, then you're just dealing with your childhood issues, things that are unresolved, things that are incomplete, unfinished for you. So you don't even know if you like the person. You don't even know if you're compatible. So a lot of people will stay unwell because then you have to get to the big question. Is this the person for me? Am I meant to be in this job? Am I meant to be in this relationship? Is this the right church? Is this organization for me? And so when you start deconstructing your relationship map, It is messy because relationships are everything. Connection is a biological imperative. So we're meant to be connected. You have an insecure attachment. It means you are living in your shadow, living with your shadow, and the things you need about yourself to pivot from where you are now are repressed. So to do that work, it is not easy, but the end result becomes you actually know how to connect to yourself. Therefore, you subconsciously are no longer being driven. You're consciously now deciding, having choice who is in your life and who gets to get close to you. So I hope that's helpful. It's a lot of information. Shadow work is crucial. It's amazing. If you're doing reparenting work, somatic work, any type of embodiment, anything you're doing, you're doing shadow work. It just doesn't mean it's being called that, but you're doing shadow work. Find out what got repressed about you that someone else deemed unacceptable about you that you might need. And without that, you don't get to feel whole. You don't get to be authentic. You don't get to show up with every bit of you that you need. So that's part of going on the journey. Find out more about your relationship template. See if your partner will be in this with you. And if they won't be, keep doing the work. Hang in there, because we got to figure out what flipped our lid and find ways to reconnect to who we really are. Well, no matter who's in our life, if we are in our life, it makes a big difference. And that way you get to know that you matter. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with just me, just Kim Honeycutt, just me today. Thanks for being with me. I hope this helped. And please, whatever you do from this moment, be gentle with yourself. Find a way to embrace the parts of yourself that you've been repressing so that you can reconnect to who you really are. We'll see you next time. Hey, thank you. Thank you for listening to Flip Your Lid. So I just want to ask, if you've got a second, will you take time to subscribe, rate, and maybe even share this episode with someone that you think might get something from it? You can follow along with us through YouTube, Instagram, TikTok at KB Honeycutt. That's KBHONEYCUTT. And no matter what, please treat yourself well today. We'll see you next time.